Welcome everyone and good morning. My name is Seema Akan. I'm your Liberal candidate here in beautiful Oakville West. As someone with an engineering background who works in the industrial automation field, I know how crucial skilled trades are to building a stronger economy. A stronger economy will be central to building Canada strong. From knocking on doors, visiting local businesses, I also understand how important skilled trades have been to our town's growth and success. That's why I'm honored to introduce Mike Gallagher, Business Manager at Local 793 of the International Union of Operating Engineers.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Operating Engineers Training Institute of Ontario and the Operating Engineers Local 793 head office. The Operating Engineers Local 793 has over 20,000 members in the province of Ontario and the territory of Nunavut. The Operating Engineers across the country has 57,000 members all across in every province and in territory of Canada. I want to welcome some guests. Before my remarks, our first guest I'd like to welcome is Patrick Campbell, who's a Canadian Regional Director of the IUOE. I don't know where you are, Patrick, but welcome. Several of the business managers were able to travel across the country and be with us here today, and we have Joseph McClellan from Local 721 in Nova Scotia. And right here from Hamilton, we have Greg Hoth from Local 772. Hello, Greg. Welcome. And Hamad Sa from Local 882 in British Columbia has also joined us. Come a long way. We also have Gilles Larivière from Local 905 in Quebec. Welcome to Gilles. I'd like to recognize some other special guests as well. We have with us the Mark O'Brien, who's the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for Baffinland, a good Canadian mining company with their head office here in Oakville. And I'd like to also welcome Tom Cardinal, the Chief of Staff for the Carpenters Regional Council, and Jason Rowe, the Canadian VP for our really good friends, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners, here with us. It gives me truly great pleasure to also welcome with us some tremendous Liberal candidates that we have here in Oakville. We have 5 of them, I believe. Anita Anand, from many of you know, from Oakville East, has decided to run again here, and we're very, very happy to hear that because Anita has been a tremendous representative during her time in Ottawa, and some of you will recall took us through some very challenging times with respect to the terrible COVID pandemic that we went through, and I remember that very well, and I know that Anita worked extremely hard to make sure that Canadians were protected when she was in her role in procurement. We also have here Seema Akan from Oakville West, so please welcome Seema. Seema's in my riding in Oakville, so I promised her earlier that I'm going to have to get out and mark my ballot soon to get Seema where we need her in Ottawa there. We also have Adam Van Coverden from Burlington North, Milton West. Welcome, Adam. And Christina Tesser, Milton East, Halton Hills South. Welcome, Christina. And last but not least, Katrina Gould from Burlington. Welcome, Katrina. So right off the bat, I want to say on behalf of the Operating Engineers Local 793 in Ontario, and I'm quite sure that there's tremendous support amongst the operating engineers and building trades across Canada. to announce our endorsement for Liberal leader Mark Carney and his great Liberal candidates in the upcoming federal election for April 28th. So we're pleased to announce that, Mark, and we're clearly the right one for that. Mark Carney has shown tremendous poise and action. He's been a man of action since he got started. And it's true, he's not a traditional politician, but if you take a look at his resume in terms of handling economic issues, both at the Bank of Canada when he was there in 2008 dealing with a recession, and also in the Bank of England when he was hired for the first time outside of the Bank of England, hiring somebody outside of England to run the bank when they were going through Brexit. So he has tremendous experience dealing with economic issues, and that is precisely what we need right now at this point in our history, because we're going through an unprecedented and unneeded and unwanted crisis where across the world, but certainly hard hitting us here in Canada with the tariffs. We've already had 36,000 Canadians apparently have been displaced regarding the tariff numbers, and we know in our heart that that's probably not the end of it. So workers right now need a champion, and families need a champion who's going to look after them and make sure that they can hang on to their homes and that they can, they can get retrained if necessary, or that they can, that we can find a way to find new markets, which I see that Mark Carney has already been busy going to France and Great Britain and other places where we're going to need to revisit and open up new trade routes and diversify our trade, which has been probably since the early 70s way too dependent, as we're finding out, unfortunately now, with the United States. Also, Mark Carney gets it when you take a look at the, going up to the Arctic and visiting that area and making commitments not just for, the military, purchasing $6 billion radar, which is going to protect us in a very, very dangerous world. That was a decisive action that needed to be taken given the uncertainty that we have with the U.S. And we know that the government of Canada is going to do more and has to do more to protect our beautiful Arctic and the work that exists up there and the possibilities that exist up there, which we can benefit the Inuit and Canadians from across the country. So his experience gives him the unique ability to handle international issues that are posed by Donald Trump right now. He's done very well in his way of standing up to Donald Trump. And I think that it was brilliant for him not to go rushing down to the United States to meet with the president at a time that, he's running a kind of a game show or something down there. I don't know what to call it, a reality show, I guess, or whatever, and bringing people into the sacred Oval Office and being very, very insulting to them. And I don't think that should happen to anybody, anywhere, never mind. But we sure as hell don't want it to happen to our country, because us Canadians, we're very, very proud and we love our country and we want to make sure that it survives. We never have wanted to be like Americans. All due respect to Americans, we are Canadians. We have our own history, we have our own culture, and we have our own way of respecting one another and making sure that our neighbors and friends across the country have health care and are treated with respect and are able to be just who they want to be without discrimination. So that's not the model for Canada. Canada has its own model. So I think I'll leave it at that, because my duty here is actually to introduce Anita Anand. And Anita, as I said, is wonderful. I mean, all of you know her perhaps as well, but I can tell you, having known Anita for quite a long time, for many years, she's very, very dedicated. I don't know where she finds the time, to say that she's a mother of four. And, I see her at community events like the Oakville Santa Claus Parade, I think is where I first met Anita, and, and talked to her. And she's very, very highly regarded in the Oakville community. And we need to fight like hell to make sure that she's returned to Ottawa because of the things I told you that she's been doing when she's been in public service in Ottawa. So with no further ado, I think I'll step aside and turn it over to Anita, and let's hear from her because it's a delight to listen to Anita. So come on up, Anita, and talk.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, and hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir de vous voir ce matin. We are here today, obviously, at the Oakville Training Center for the International Union of Operating Engineers. And this is the place, the site of one of my very first announcements when I was elected in 2019. And since that time, it has been just a complete honor to be back here numerous times, to get to know the team here, Local 793. You guys are awesome, and I'm just so proud to be able to have represented you in the House of Commons, as well as to get to know you and the contributions you've made. So let's give it up for Local 793. You all, as workers, represent one of Canada's competitive advantages. That is in the fact that you contribute to a workforce comprised of skilled trades, comprised of people who know how to build an economy. You are at the heart of our workforce, and you are the reason that Canadians have been able to rely on the skilled trades for generations. And I'd like to thank Mike and Local 793 for your friendship over the years. And Mike, you said it well. This is a moment for our country, a moment in our history that we are about to define, a moment where we can stay strong and build the economy of the future, the strongest economy in the G7, or a moment where we can wither and lose out to our southern neighbor. And I know, and I think we all know, what side of history that we want our great country to be on. Pour passer à travers cette crise, il faut bâtir une économie plus forte que jamais. Il faut bâtir une classe moyenne plus forte que jamais. Et il faut bâtir une main-d'œuvre plus forte que jamais. Et c'est pour ça que nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. To meet this moment, we need real and experienced leadership, smart, thoughtful, firm, steady leadership. To meet this moment, Canada needs Mark Carney's leadership. I worked with Mark during the financial crisis of 2008. We spent time together during the leadership race and now as a member of his cabinet. And I am always struck by Mark's thoughtfulness and steadiness through crises. Mark carries a passion for the future of our country, the future of our economy, and he has a transformative vision that includes strong, trained, unionized workers at its very core. Because our economy is only strong when our unions are strong as well. Working hand in hand with groups like the operating engineers, we're going to stand up for workers here in Oakville and across Canada. And we're going to stand up to ensure that no one threatens our economic sovereignty ever again. Now, please keep clapping and join me in giving the warmest Oakville welcome you can possibly give to Prime Minister Mark Carney. Bienvenue à Oakville, Mark. So great to have you here.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stay in Oakville now. This is great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici à Oakville avec tant exceptionnels candidats libéraux. but Canada appreciates your decision to step up and serve our country at this pivotal moment. I want to thank you, Anita, for that kind introduction. I want to thank you for your service and for continuing to serve us. But I really want to thank you, Mike, for what you have done for this union, for these workers, for this country, what you continue to do. And your support means everything to us because of what it represents. And what it represents. And what it represents is all of you at Local 793 and the work you do every day, each and every single day, to literally build our country. The principles of solidarity and unity that underpin this union, and those like it, are precisely what we need right now, because we are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. And as we saw, unfortunately, once again, I'm going to say last week, but I think it was just earlier this week. It's just earlier this week. It's the same week. President Trump is trying to fundamentally restructure the U.S. economy, and in the process, he's reshaping, disrupting, really, the international trading system that we've known all our lives and rupturing the global economy. And while it is progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada earlier this week, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. There are still 3 different sets of U.S. tariffs that remain in place that will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers, businesses, and families. And we must respond with purpose and with force. We are a free, sovereign, and ambitious country. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Nous contrôlons notre destin, y compris notre destin économique. Nous allons tracer notre propre voie. Nous choisissons de nous battre, de protéger et de bâtir. Nous allons nous battre contre ces tarifs jusqu'à ce qu'ils soient annulés. Nous allons protéger nos travailleurs et nos entreprises pendant cette période difficile. And above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. Our task as a nation over the coming weeks and months and years is to think bigger and to act bigger, to build Canada strong. That starts right here. That starts by investing in our workers. Crane operators, bricklayers, welders, and those in the specialized trades that are essential to the future of Canada. We have to invest in their futures too. Investing in the skilled trades is, as Anita mentioned, at the very heart of our economic strategy. The skilled trades build our homes, offices, factories, roads, bridges, and rails. You are, and your colleagues across this country, are the driving force of Canadian prosperity. And our goal is to build the strongest economy in the G7. The next decades are going to be very busy for those in the skilled trades in Canada. We are not just going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the skilled trades. We are creating hundreds of thousands of careers. Right now, we simply don't have enough workers. Almost 250,000 construction workers are expected to retire over the course of the next 7 years, creating a shortfall on current plans before our ambitious plans a shortfall of over 60,000 workers. Again, that's before we transform our economy. The jobs will be there. The careers will be there. We need to make sure that the workers, the skilled workers, are there too. And that's why today I'm announcing that a new Liberal government will cover the costs of apprenticeship training for Canada's skilled workers. And let me be clear what that means. We will invest in the entire pipeline of talent, from the workers themselves, through to the labor unions, through to the post-secondary institutions, through to the employers and the provinces, all to ensure that our newly trained workers can go wherever they are most needed, that they're mobile, they're agile. To directly support apprentices, to directly support them, we will create an apprenticeship grant of up to $8,000 for registered apprentices. This removes a key financial barrier for those who want to enter the trades. And we will support our unions directly. Les syndicats jouent un rôle clé dans la formation des travailleurs spécialisés. C'est pourquoi nous doublons le financement du programme pour la formation et l'innovation en milieu syndical, qui va passer de 25 à 50 millions de dollars, from 25 to $50 million. Because the unions are at the center of apprenticeship training. Les institutions postsecondaires jouent, elles aussi, un rôle important dans la formation de la main-d'œuvre. Et nous les soutenons avec un investissement de 20 millions de dollars qui va leur permettre de créer plus de places pour la formation des apprentis. Nous allons aussi continuer d'aider les employeurs qui engagent des apprentis pour des métiers rouges, grâce au service apprentissage qui fournit jusqu'à $10 000 par apprenti aux employeurs admissibles. We will work with the provinces. We committed 2 weeks ago, all the first ministers. We committed to increase labor mobility for skilled tradespeople between all our provinces and territories. There's vital work to break down internal trade barriers. In fact, our government has committed to remove all federal restrictions on mobility by Canada Day. Free trade in Canada, free mobility by Canada Day. Because, well, Local 793 is the best local. And that includes work in Baffinland. But there is going to be work right across this country, and these men and women and those who join them should be able to work anywhere in this great country if they wish. We are also expanding the labor mobility tax deduction to ensure that those workers who travel more than 120 kilometers from their home to a job site can deduct more of their expenses. Now, at the same time, we're committing to significantly increasing the per-year tax deduction for travel expenses across. We are blessed in Canada with the best workers in the world. We just need a lot more of them in the trades. Our ambitious plans for Canada require us to be ambitious in supporting the women and men who will build Canada. Now there is someone who just doesn't get that, and that's Pierre Poilievre, the kind of career politician who worships the free market despite never having to make a payroll. He has a reflex which is to cut and destroy. It's not leadership, it's ideology. Contrairement à Pierre Poilievre, moi, j'ai travaillé dans le secteur privé. Je sais comment l'économie fonctionne et comment on peut faire en sorte qu'elle fonctionne mieux pour tout le monde. I know that building a strong Canada requires a positive plan, not just a negative slogan. It requires ambitious action, not empty rhetoric. It requires investment, not cuts. This is the time to invest. This is the time to build. That's what Liberals know. Canadians know that what, more importantly, who we invest in today, that will return to Canadians many times over in the years to come. It will come back in terms of greater productivity and long-term economic strength. Those are fancy words. For good, high-paying union jobs, prosperity for Canadian families. À court terme, ça va permettre de créer des milliers de bons emplois pour la prochaine génération de travailleurs. Ça va encourager les jeunes à envisager une carrière dans les métiers spécialisés. Leur donner l'espoir d'avoir non seulement une bonne carrière, mais une bonne vie. Yes, there will be difficult days ahead because of President Trump's trade war. But we will weather this storm. We will get through those tough days. And we will get there not only by believing in ourselves, but by investing in each other, in our skills, in our talent, in our people. And together, we, Canadians, will build Canada strong. Thank you very much. Merci. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Nous allons prendre 15 minutes de questions de la délégation, suivi des médias locaux. First question, Judy.
Good morning, Mr. Carney. Judy Shridden with CTV News. Reuters is reporting that GM has decided to hire hundreds of workers at its Indiana plant to ramp up production, and there are concerns here that this is in preparation for moving GM's operation in Oshawa, where it makes the Silverado truck, to the U.S., something that could happen in weeks. What are you doing now to stop GM from moving to the U.S., to deter any plans that may be in the works?
So the first thing we're doing, Judy, is we're doing several things. And our core of our strategy is to fight, protect, and to build. In terms of fighting, we have put in place, I announced 2 days ago, counter tariffs on the U.S. autos into Canada. So, for example, if a Silverado truck is made in the United States, it is going to face a 25% tariff on that truck coming into Canada, and it's going to be based on the content, the non-Canadian content, non-Mexican content of that truck. On average, U.S. vehicles as a whole have lower, it will be in a higher effective tariff in effect. I'll cut to the chase on that. So that's the first thing, we put that in place. We've done that in a way that's smart, though, because we've carved out auto parts, so our auto industry remains competitive in that. So there's a clear strategy directly to the U.S. Secondly, we're making available, is a better way to put it, enormous financing for Canadian enterprises, including would be GM or others in Canada, both through the ability to defer their taxes, to take direct financing in enormous amounts, tens of billions of dollars that is being provided on a low-interest basis, if needed, as well as support directly to workers. Third thing we're doing in terms of our strategy is around building, which is we've put in place a new strategic response fund, which more directly will supply support for building made in Canada. But if I can just bring that together, so your question was what are we doing, but to be absolutely clear about the situation is the U.S. has put in place punitive tariffs on an industry which is fully integrated. There will be disruption in that industry. It will rebound negatively on the United States. Let's be absolutely clear. The Americans are hurting themselves. They are hurting GM. They are hurting Ford. They are hurting American workers. We've seen the first signs of that in the financial markets, dramatic moves in the financial markets, which is telling Americans that are listening, that there are future job cuts, higher inflation, and likely an American recession ahead. So we're going to protect our workers. We're going to fight back. We're going to build. We're going to get stronger. They're going to get weaker. We're going to get a deal in the end. En ce qui concerne, c'est une question plus générale que ça, mais la réponse, la stratégie du gouvernement que nous mettons en œuvre, c'est de se battre contre les tarifs avec les contre-tarifs canadiens, y compris pour le secteur automobile, et ce n'est plus le cas que les véhicules américains pourraient être vendus au Canada sans tarif. Ça, déjà, change. OK? Première chose. Deuxièmement, de protéger les travailleurs canadiens et les entreprises canadiennes, y compris GM au Canada, avec le financement favorable et d'autres initiatives. Il y en a plusieurs. En somme, c'est à peu près 20 milliards de dollars. Point final. On bat une nouvelle industrie canadienne avec une fonds de réponse stratégique. Okay?
Mr. Carney, last week, or actually earlier this week, as Prime Minister, you spoke about putting in place a framework in which you can help or convince auto manufacturers to stay in Canada, to fend off, to protect them from Canadian tariffs. I am wondering about this framework. When is it going to be in place? This is a fast-moving process.
Yep.
As I mentioned, this plant could be closed in weeks before the election. What can you do now in terms of adding pressure? Are you going to put in any punitive penalties?
Thank you for the question. So, as you know, Judy, during an election period, what a government can do is more limited, a so-called caretaker period, which does exist now. What we did as a government in anticipation of this, to the maximum extent that we could in advance of the election, is have authorization to put in place tariffs, counter-tariffs, and other counter-tariff measures. We are putting it in place. So the cost to American-based manufacturers has changed dramatically with the tariffs that we have put in place. We do that with regret in the sense of we're responding to unjustified, illegal, and misguided tariffs in the United States. Vehicle production in the United States, vehicle purchases in the United States, economic activity in the United States, jobs in the auto sector in the United States, all of those are going to go down. They are going to go down. The U.S. is harming themselves with these tariffs. Okay? It takes some time for that to filter through, just like it took some time for the impacts of Brexit to filter through to the UK economy. But I have seen this movie before. I know exactly what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen to them. The Americans are going to get weaker. We are going to stand by our workers. We are standing by our companies. We are building new trade relationships. We are going to stay strong and get stronger.
Statistics Canada is reporting that 33,000 jobs were lost in March, which is the biggest job loss that this country has seen since January 2022,
Yep.
and the unemployment rate is ticking higher. Are these numbers a sign of things to come, and how soon specifically do you think a recession could hit the U.S. and Canada?
I think the couple of things. One, as I mentioned in my remarks, there are some tough days ahead. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And part of the dynamic here in the very near term, in the month, has been about the uncertainty around U.S. tariffs. Now we have greater certainty about those tariffs, or at least the ambition of those tariffs, the actual fact of those tariffs. They're very misguided, so we'll see how they are adjusted over time. We can expect pressure on unemployment in this economy. It's one of the reasons why, prior to this election, we changed the rules on EI. So there is no waiting period now to receive EI. If companies want a job share, you can receive employment insurance. You can receive employment insurance for the portion of that job share. We have changed some of the technicalities, if you will, around the definitions of that drive the levels of EI and the speed with which it's paid out, all of which has been to make the employment insurance provided to workers more generous, more rapid, in anticipation of some of this pressure. But if I can say one other thing and then hand back for your follow-up, what we are doing, what the Liberal Party is doing, what my government will do if we are elected, is to be very ambitious, to control what we control. We cannot control President Trump. Ultimately, he will be influenced by what he is doing to his economy, without question. But what we can control is how we build. We can control the process and the ambition of doubling the pace of home building. We can control the speed with which we do major projects in this economy. We can control having one Canadian economy, which is why the federal government is going to move with lightning speed to get out of the way. And let me just make one point here, which is that, one final point, which is, it's too late to make one point, but I'm going to make one final point. Is that the scale of the negative impact, which will be more immediate, understood, from U.S. trade action, we can more than give ourselves back by having one Canadian economy. We can give ourselves far more than they can take away.
There are several articles out about your father, specifically about how he was a principal at a federal Indian day school and went on to defend residential schools. Do you share his views that residential school founders were not ill-intended and that Indigenous studies highlighting these negative effects of these institutions were, quote, slanted?
I love my father, but I don't share those views, to be absolutely clear. It's a long, painful part of our history. I've learned personally, we've learned as a nation. We're in a process of the damage, of the fundamental damage of residential schools and day schools to those who attended them, those who are their descendants, if I can put it that way, the culture as well, and a very necessary, essential process of reconciliation, truth and reconciliation, has begun. At the core of my government, as it was the case at the core of the previous government, will be to advance that process of reconciliation. That's a fundamentally and deeply held personal commitment of mine. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. You've spoken that if you win the election, you negotiate a new security and trade agreement with Donald Trump. One problem is that he routinely breaks agreements that he's signed with Canada. The most notable, of course, is NAFTA. How do you think you'd be able to actually get assurances from the president that he'd follow through on that deal?
Well, it's an entirely valid question, and we've got to go into that negotiation, which the president agreed to have, eyes wide open. We have to go in sectors where the fundamental economic interests are so deeply tied that the incentives are there, and those have been showed. There may need to be more specific penalties as part of that agreement. That's another opportunity. But we have to have those elements there. I look specifically to the auto sector, where it is going to become very apparent very quickly that taking apart something that has been built up literally over my entire lifetime, the auto pact began in 1965 when I was born, is not in the interests of U.S. jobs, U.S. competitiveness. We're only going to sign a deal that's in the interest of our workers as well. But look, eyes wide open, sector-specific, building out from that, comprehensive negotiation. That's the only way to get a deal that's going to work. Back to you.
So you say you could put additional penalties in there. Could you expand on what you mean?
Look, I've done a lot of negotiating over the years. It's never a good idea to negotiate with yourself. Thank you.
News.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to ask you about the turmoil on the stock markets that you referred to earlier. During this campaign, you've taken measures to help workers affected by the tariffs,
Yeah.
help businesses. What about the millions of people who are retired or about to retire, who are absolutely terrified about their retirement savings? What are you going to do for them, and what's your message to them?
Yeah, we think a lot of them, and whether it's directly their savings or their savings through the Ontario Teachers Plan or Canada Pension Plan, is several things. One is at the core of what we're going to do is to build this country and take control of what we can control. That's built. It's going to be built up from workers. That's why today's announcement is so important, and why I'm thankful that you're here to help report on it. We have a lot of fundamental strength in this country. We have a lot of financial firepower in the federal government. We need to use that to maximum effect. And maximum effect is to make sure that we've got trained workers coming through the pipeline, so to speak, and that every federal dollar is catalyzing multiple dollars of private investment. That's how we're going to lean against this, and Canada is going to start to separate from the pack. Thank you. Les fonds de pension, je comprends bien que les Canadiens et Canadiennes s'inquiètent de la situation sur la bourse et pour leur pension. Et moi aussi. Et la réponse économique doit être de bâtir notre économie forte avec l'investissement aux travailleurs dans les métiers spécialisés et puis utiliser la force, et c'est vraiment une force du gouvernement fédéral, afin de catalyser d'investissement privé ici au Canada. Merci.
Dernière question de la délégation à Boris, ensuite les médias locaux.
Le suivi de Glenn, Boris Proulx, Le Devoir. Vous êtes ici à Oakville, dans une circonscription que les sondages vous donnaient perdant il y a quelques mois à peine. Vous êtes devant des travailleurs syndiqués également. On a beaucoup entendu Donald Trump, les menaces de tarifs dans votre discours. Est-ce que votre stratégie, c'est de solliciter leur vote avec l'émotion de la peur? Est-ce que c'est
Non, pas du tout. Non. Je ne suis pas peur de Donald Trump. Je ne suis pas peur des Américains. Pas du tout. Je connais bien votre question. Mais j'ai de la confiance aux Canadiens et Canadiennes. J'ai de la confiance à l'avenir de notre pays. Il faut bâtir, il faut agir. Dans une crise, il faut agir. Nous agissons. Mon gouvernement agit. Et nous allons bâtir une économie forte, vraiment. On va gagner cette guerre. On va gagner. C'est un message positif. Absolument, c'est un message positif pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes.
Merci. Irek Çakır with Turkish Voice of Canada. Immigration policies have been among the most criticized aspects of the Liberal government. You've changed the Minister of Immigration in your new cabinet, and this event's opening was made by an immigrant Turkish-Canadian MP candidate, Sima Akan. Will your approach to immigration be different under a new Liberal government? Are there going to be any critical changes in policy or implementation? What are your key promises on immigration and for immigrants?
Thank you for this question. It's a local question, it's a national question, so it's an incredibly important set of issues. I agree with the premise of your question, which is that immigration policy made mistakes. We let in far too many people in all classes of immigration, from temporary workers to foreign students and beyond. And when I say too many, I mean relative to our capacity to receive these people. We didn't have enough housing, not enough social services. Those going to educational institutions weren't all getting the education they deserve, an education of the level that they deserve. Au Québec, il n'y a pas d'assez placement dans la langue française, par exemple. On est plus haut que la capacité d'accueil ici, au Québec et à travers le Canada. So we've had to make significant changes. We've had to implement caps with respect to foreign students, with respect to temporary workers, the overall level of immigration. We will need to keep those in place. We will need to work with the provinces to make sure that they are shared in a way that is effective to keep this economy working. And what we also have to do, which is why earlier this week we announced our intention to double the rate of home building, we need to build the capacity of Canada to welcome immigrants. And until we get to that point, we are going to have to manage very carefully the levels of immigration in this country.
Good morning, Mr. Carney. Julie Sharp with CHCH News. How can you ensure the Oakville Ford plant, currently closed for retooling, will reopen?
I spoke earlier this week. I had a long conversation with the global CEO of Ford, Jim Farley. We discussed specifically the Oakville plant, the competitiveness of the plant, the investments that Ford is making in the plant, their commitment, his personal commitment to me, exactly your question, that the Oakville plant they'll continue their investments, that plant will reopen. The Super Duty trucks are some of their best vehicles, their most effective vehicles, and they're committed to Canada. Last point, so that I take that commitment directly from them. Last point, though, which is a point in general, which is the way we've designed our counter-tariffs. The way we designed our counter-tariffs is that there is a big incentive for global manufacturers who want to sell in Canada to follow through on their investments and maintain their production in Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you.